Halo, these are the Mega Construx Halo Battle for the Arc series figures, and one of them's not a figure. More on that in a minute. But these do come individually packaged in these little regular blind bag packages. They don't tell you what's inside each, but each one has a little code on the back. And as always, if you do a little internet search, you can find the list of what code represents what figure or item inside. Let's take a closer look at these. This is unusual. There are two Mark IV Spartans in this series with identical bodies and identical armor pieces, just different colors applied to them. Different colored plastic and different print for the visor. Also, the yellow one has the speckling, whereas the turquoise one is just a solid color. The weapons are the most modern versions of those, with the battle rifle and the SMG, each having a small rail segment for accommodating a scope, and they also have a standardized barrel tip or muzzle brake section and its diameter, which can accept an energy bayonet and possibly some suppressors. I don't remember what all accessories are available up to this point. Unfortunately, they're not compatible, especially with the rail, not compatible completely with the Call of Duty figures, which have had many accessories made for them in the past, because they did swap the tongue and groove system. They just reversed it relative to what they did in the Call of Duty ones. Good looking figures, but yeah, it's just interesting and different to get two of the same model essentially in one series with just different colors. Makes it impossible to, well, makes it more difficult to feel for them, but again, you can just look up the codes if you're looking for a specific one. Both of those Spartans, I should have mentioned, are common figures in this series, as is this Elite Miner, which has a much darker and more orange, kind of burnt orange color for its armor pieces than it appeared on the packaging, where you get almost a golden appearance. It looks more yellowish there. It's just something to note, but a pretty good looking figure. This entire series, of course, is directly based upon and revolving around Halo Wars 2 in particular. So this is really trying to be a Halo Wars 2 specific Elite Miner, but I actually appreciate the fact that the armor is a little bit darker than it appeared on the packaging, because I think this is a little bit easier to put into different scenarios that are not necessarily in that exact portion of the timeline. You know, they can be mixed in a little bit more easily, I think, with elites and UNSC forces from other series, from other parts of the Halo story. So that's good. All of the stands that I got in this series do have an item code printed on one side and Made in China printed on the other. That's unfortunate, because you're always going to have some kind of ugly print that you don't want to see facing towards you unless you cover that up with some other pieces, and kind of makes me not want to use these stands. I hope they go back to, at the most, having all that print on just one side. Let's talk about figures that are generic enough to go into different series and different parts of the story and all. This Marine is great because it's such a generic color scheme with the green base under there, and then just the black and gray for the armor pieces and such. That's really good. This is a super massable figure. In my opinion, one of the most massable figures that they have individually produced ever. So just good stuff there. I'm glad that the armor pieces are not all, or the add-on pieces are not all just the gunmetal gray. You know, you get some black in there as well, which just keeps it looking a little bit more interesting, a little bit less toyish. And the print on the helmet is, or the whole headpiece is done pretty well. And this is again the most recent version of an assault rifle mold with a rail on it, so you can attach a scope as they make ones for the Halo line, and also again the barrel tip has that slightly larger size that'll accommodate some accessories. Sorry, I keep forgetting to mention Rarity. That last Marine was a common figure, and this Banished Brute here is also, again, a common figure. And this one has the fairly dark skin tone, which is good. Just dark overall, except for the Brute shot, which really stands out with the bright silver, kind of medium bright silver, not the brightest that they make. This obviously can be held in two hands across the body. I just have it held in one so you can see the figure a little bit better. I love that color. What color is that? It's like a grape metallic, and again, it's different from what's shown on the packaging. So here, interestingly, the actual blind bags themselves show a hot pink, like a fuchsia for the color. I'm glad it's not that color personally, but then the collecting sheet that's included with each figure shows just a pretty straightforward purple, like a violet purple. So it's not either of those. I think it's better than both of those. It's a really nice color. It's subtle, but as soon as the light hits it a little bit, you notice it. Yeah, that's a good one for what it is. I think it's just a good looking figure in general, even if you're not into Halo Wars 2. Now, here is Captain Cutter as a hologram, or at least the needlessly redesigned Halo Wars 2 version of Captain Cutter. Fortunately, you don't have that much in the way of distinguishing features here, so you can kind of see this as the original Halo Wars 1 Captain Cutter if you want to. I think that works out okay, but this is a rare figure in the series, not the ultra rare and not a secret rare. It's on the collection sheet. It's one of the normal-ish ones. It's not the most common of rarity, but I like being able to get these a little bit more easily than before, and just having them individually bagged and just as normal figures. The transparent ones, the gummies as we call them. This one has a magnum in his hand, and yeah, it looks pretty good. These are interestingly some of the cheapest to produce because they don't have any paint applications whatsoever, but I find them to be particularly interesting and collectible myself. And this is a pretty good color here, pretty well done for what it is. This Grunt is the other rare figure in the series, with a slightly magenta of dark red armor set with the very bright silver colored accents printed on there. The skin tone for this one is an ugly version of yellow. It's like a Dijon mustard color, or maybe banana slug color. Whatever it is, it's weird. It's very alien, which is appropriate in a way. I kind of wish it was a little bit darker, but it's not bad. The head is done very well. The mold is done very well. And the paint applications look pretty good for the respirator. And even the tiny little dots for the eyes. Those are actually molded to stick out a little bit. You can actually see it better here on camera than you can in person. They're very small details, but they used very opaque neon orange for the little bits of, I believe it's spray that they put on for those. If it's not a stab, I think it's a spray. But whatever it is, it's noticeable from a distance, even though there's not a lot of contrast between that orange and the weird, slightly dark yellow color. This is a well-executed figure. I do wish the skin tone was a little bit darker still. I've previously complained about the posing of the needler, in particular, with these modern super articulated grunts from Mega. Not being able to turn that as viewed right now, not being able to turn it away from us, so not being able to turn it to face more across the body. But playing the games, not so much Halo Wars 2 itself, but the games in general from the Halo universe, I've noticed that this is actually fairly accurate to the way that grunts hold that weapon. From game to game, I think the most recent two that I've played were Halo 5 and Halo 3. And in both, there's a different model for Halo 5, of course, but in both, they're not holding it straight. They're not holding the weapons in human kind of ways. So I think I was actually wrong before to debate this and to lament that lack of articulation, because this is a more accurate pose there. And that right there in particular is a really good looking pose. And if you want to bring it across the body, you can, only a little bit, but you can just rotate the whole thing at the waist. So for posing and for stop motion, I think you can still do just plenty well enough as it is. And that brings us to item number 8, which is the ultra rare item of this series, obviously not a figure. It's a buildable Spirit of Fire in microscale. You call that microscale or nanoscale? Whatever you choose to call it. It's really, really small. Let me just pick a figure just for the sake of scale there a little bit. You know, it scales pretty decently well to the figures in terms of the volume of stuff you get. You get more stuff with the Spirit of Fire build, I feel, than you do with a figure, but, you know, there are no printed pieces or anything. The stand is included. They give you instructions with this one in particular for how to put it together. It goes together fairly quickly, makes good use of some of Mega's interesting pieces. Like, look at those 1x1 modified plate pieces. There are 4 of them on the back, and they have just an open stud hanging off the side. Such an interesting idea to have just the stud just hanging off part way, just overlapping what's beneath it. Such an interesting thing. It's so useful too. They make them that go down, they make them that go up, they make them 1x1 and 1x2 as well. Just good stuff. Definitely a good showcase of some of the interesting pieces that are in the Mega Construx part library, you know, that allows you to get a lot more detail at this scale than you would if you didn't have access to those pieces. I think it's a cool, different thing to do, to bring in a micro fleet sort of build as one of the you know, findable figures, if you will, or replacements for figures. Very easy to feel for this one. Basically, just pick up a bag and shake it, and if you hear things rattling around, then it's this one. You hear a lot of things rattling around, but yeah, I mean, it's not a great thing, but for what it is, I think it's well done and is an interesting inclusion in one of these blind bag series. As usual, pretty good execution for what you get here. Again, I personally am not that big of a fan of Halo Wars 2. I kind of prefer the first one, and I also definitely prefer the first-person shooters, but that's just personal preference. I don't know how well it's doing out there in the community in general. If you have any insight into that, please feel free to leave comments down below. Do you think it's a good idea for Mega to continue supporting the Halo Wars franchise at this point, or do you feel like they need to focus more on the core stuff, even with Infinity still some ways out? But let me know in the comments if you have a favorite figure out of what you've seen here. I think I'm going to have to go for the Marine. It's just a really useful one. It's kind of timeless and well done for what it is, and very, very massable. But again, my personal opinion. Let me know yours, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.